Everyone, and welcome to the fourth session, the fourth power session in the Strategy plus Systems equals Success series. For those of you who don't yet know me, I'm Judy Whalen, and I'm the host for this series. So I've got three really interesting topics lined up for you today. So let's just jump in and see if we can get this to work. It always takes a little bit of time to get this first one to move forward. All right, there we go. Okay, the format for today's power session is I'm going to do a quick review of previous topics since we're more than halfway through this series. We'll deal with today's topics, and then I'll review the links for the free gifts, and we'll wrap up. So it's only 30 minutes, so stick with me. So here we go. So why am I offering this series? And the reason why, if you've been with me through the other three power sessions, is because there's so much confusion in the marketplace about the word strategy. People use it in all different frames of reference. Some of those are correct and some of those aren't. So what I want to do is reduce the confusion around the word strategy so that you get really clear on what it is and you can use it to grow your business. And that's the whole reason for doing this series is as business owners, solo entrepreneurs, business owners, even nonprofit leaders, the common thread for all of us is that we are interested in growing our business, our organization, and making more of an impact. So the reason I'm doing this is to provide clarity so that you can grow your business and reach your goals because the end of the year is coming. So the previous topics that we've covered, and you can access these and get more detail on all these topics by visiting the Center for Strategic Change's YouTube channel. So the topics that we've covered include the definition of strategy and systems. We've talked about the 3 levels of strategy, and there's more detail for that on the YouTube channel. We've talked about the characteristics of great strategists so that you can understand what those characteristics are and you can continue to develop those characteristics so you can be a great strategist. We've talked about tips for creating effective strategy and for creating effective systems. We've talked about what are the common systems that most businesses have. Last time we addressed the pitfalls of strategy, and we talked about the difference between strategy versus tactics. So you can find all those previous power sessions up on YouTube on the Center for Strategic Change's channel. Just go to YouTube, do a search for Center for Strategic Change, and you'll find the videos. So those are the previous topics. So before we jump into today's topics, I wanted to just go back and just do a really quick review of the pitfalls of strategy, because today we're going to be talking about the pitfalls of systems. So just briefly, and again, there's more detail on this in the 3rd power session that's up on YouTube. So a pitfall of strategy was lack of clarity, not really understanding what the goal is, why you're creating it, what do you hope to accomplish. Another pitfall is not doing the market research, not understanding what's happening in your marketplace and how it could affect you. So another pitfall of strategy was not learning from the current strategy. Is step back, take a look at the current strategy, and what can you learn from that before you create the next one? Another pitfall is the lack of getting people on the same page. That's part of what causes confusion. People who have all different priorities, all different perspectives, and they're not yet in agreement. Another pitfall of strategy is the lack of an action plan. In order to implement your strategy, you need an action plan. And another pitfall is the lack of a measurement process. You need to be able to determine what is it that you want to measure so that you can determine if you're making the progress you intended to make. And another pitfall is the inability to adjust. Strategy is about putting a strategy together, implementing it, measuring. But if what you're measuring isn't producing the results that you anticipated, you need to be able to adjust. So you need to be flexible. There has to be that willingness, that openness within the culture of the company that it's okay to make a change. And then the last pitfall of strategy is not celebrating the small successes that happen on the way to that really huge success. Celebrating the small successes is what keeps your employees, your stakeholders engaged, enthused, energized. So those are pitfalls that we covered last week when we talked about strategy. So during this power session, we're going to talk about the traps, the pitfalls that you need to avoid when you start working on systems. We're also going to talk about the role of systems in operations. And then I'm going to share with you a system that you can use to create and implement your strategy and measure it. So let's get on to those pitfalls. Before we jump into the pitfalls, I just want to refresh our memories on what is the definition of systems. Okay. A system is a group of interacting, interdependent elements that meet a desired objective. So there's one word already that causes confusion. Well, two words. Desired objective. You have to know what is the desired goal. What's the end result that you're wanting to achieve there. But to help put this into a more, let's just call it practical definition, I added this to the definition today to help you better understand systems from a real simple, practical definition. So think of a system as a set of processes, tools, and people that all work together. That's the key. Work together to solve a problem or achieve a goal. So it takes that first definition and it refines it a bit. A set of processes, tools, and people that all work together. That's a big two words there. Work together to solve a problem or achieve a goal. So with those two definitions in mind, let's move on to thinking about what pitfalls could you encounter as you start to work on building a system or refining a system. Okay, and the whole reason I'm covering this is because I want you to avoid the pitfalls. If you can be aware and understand some of the hazards that you might encounter as you build a system, refine a system, implement the system, it's going to save you all kinds of trouble. So you see that black hole that person just jumped over. That's my goal for this, is I want you to be able to avoid the pitfalls, that black hole. And the reason is because I've seen this happen. If you happen to go over that edge and fall into that black hole, the result is you end up wasting time, using resources to climb back out of that hole. You may be losing revenue, profit, and the biggest resource that you will be jeopardizing is the goodwill of the people in your organization. This is what I see most often when employees, staff, volunteers get frustrated. It's because somehow something caused this pitfall to happen and somehow the system went into the black hole. And as you try to claw your way back up and get out of it, you're using up resources. Okay, you're using up time, you're using up energy, you're using up the goodwill of the people who've been involved with the system or impacted the system. So do whatever you can to avoid these pitfalls. So what is a pitfall? Again, a pitfall can be caused by a lack of clarity. And it sounds so simple, but helping people really get clear is a bit of a challenge. You have to do some, what I call that strategic thinking. What is it that we want this system to do? What's our end goal with it? Why is this system even important? How will we convey the importance of this to either the people who are designing it, to the people who may need to be funding it, and to the people who may need to be implementing it? So getting clarity on all the different facets related to the system is really critical before you start developing it or refining it. So another pitfall, and I see this one when I'm out working with clients, is the lack of considering the human aspect of systems. Remember in that second definition, it included processes, tools, and the human aspect and people. So as you're working with systems or thinking about creating a new one, be sure you consider the human aspect. What does this mean to the people who may have to implement it? Why is this important to them? Is this going to make things better for the organization, or is it just adding some more, let's call it busy work? And if it's busy work, then why are you creating it? I also want to share with you this part of the human aspect. And when I saw this little graphic, it just created this crystal clear image in my mind, because I see this when I'm working with clients, and it definitely impacts systems, and it impacts an organization's ability to move forward, be current, or to change. One of the aspects of humans as we're working in an organization, and especially if we've been part of the team that, let's just say, designed the system that's being reviewed, or the decision has been made to change, is there's the potential for ownership from individuals on the team that created that initially to become a barrier. They can become resistant. They can be challenging in team meetings. They may not support revisions that are suggested. They can even become naysayers to people who are not yet involved in the system, so that the support of it becomes minimal. So be aware of ownership issues and how you can help people who were involved in the initial creation be involved in refining and get on board with whatever changes may be considered. So another pitfall is the lack of innovative thinking. I also see this when I'm working with organizations, is that sometimes it's easier for teams to not think about taking that big leap and doing the innovative thinking that leads to innovative change, but to just do what I'm going to call these small incremental changes. So just consider it, maybe the system just gets a tweak instead of really being examined for, is it still pertinent, or do we need to make a new change? Do we need to implement a new system? So innovative thinking is crucial to the whole process of designing, refining, validating systems. And another pitfall, and this is very similar to what we saw with strategy, is the lack of input from people who actually do the work. Involve those people who do the work. They've got the insights that are needed into what's working with the system, what's not. So involve those who do the work. And another pitfall, and this is also similar to strategy, is the lack of documentation. I see this a lot with solopreneurs and small businesses, is the lack of documentation. Once you've got the system designed and tested, document it and put it in a procedures handbook, which are now all online, so that whoever comes along next is hired and needs to work in that system and use that system. They've got documentation that they can follow. And another pitfall of systems is the lack of continuous process improvement. Now, this is a whole body of science and study in and of itself. But take the approach when you have a system that the culture around that system is that people are going to keep looking for ways to improve it. What could be better? Continuous process improvement. And another pitfall is the lack of using what I call those standard conventions. For instance, figure out in your organization how your filing system is designed. And I don't mean the actual where the files go. I mean, how do you name a file that you create? Because it's important to use standardized system for naming files. The same with flowcharts. If you're going to be using flowcharts in your system for documentation, then make sure that you've got a standardized flowchart template so that everybody in the organization who is working on systems uses the same type of diagrams, designs, symbols. So standardized conventions for whatever is important for your industry. And then another pitfall is the lack of stability. And this is truly one of the biggest problems I see when I'm working with clients, is that systems are designed to create stability, to create and reduce stress. But if the system's not working, or if the system doesn't exist, or if the organization hasn't even built systems, there's so much chaos and change and stress that's happening that the business is truly unstable. So a lack of stability. Build systems, refine them to create the stability that gives your employees a better chance at having a reduced stress environment. Because systems that don't work just create more stress for your staff, your employees. So before I leave this whole piece about the systems, I want to leave you with the positive side. Okay, we talked about the pitfalls and the things that you need to avoid. But we covered this in, I believe it was the third power session, and you can go back and watch that on the YouTube channel. But here's the list of positive things you can do to build effective systems. Let's get clear on your desired outcomes. Involve staff who do the work. Map out the steps. Decide on what level of detail you're going to go to, because you can get real finite or you can stop at a certain level that's not quite as finite. Look for relationships between steps and people that might need to be involved. Decide how each step is to be handled. Review and revise your systems. Document the process and then schedule an annual review of systems. Take one system, maybe one system a month, whatever. Schedule an annual review. So I want to go on and just start to pull pieces together that we've covered throughout these 4 sessions. And one of these is I just want to touch on briefly the role of systems in operations. And if you look at this little graphic with all the circles, each one of those circles could represent, let's just call it a department in an organization or a function, however you want to think about it. But each one of those systems could have department, each one of those functions could have any number of systems within it. So when you start thinking about, let's just say marketing, let's say they've got 5 systems, and engineering might have 20 systems, and finance could have 12. All of a sudden, you can begin to see the complexity of systems in an organization and possibly the interrelatedness of those. So in order to help you better understand this, the definition of operations is everything that happens in a company or a nonprofit or an organization to keep it running and earning money. And I do want to just share this, that nonprofits are able to earn money. They're not prevented from earning money. The difference between earning money in a company and earning money in a nonprofit is, in a company, profits are distributed back to the shareholders. In a nonprofit, any revenue over expenses, which we would typically call profit, is invested back into the organization so that they can take on and do other work and make a greater impact. So there are no shareholders there. So nonprofits can earn money. I just want to continue to dispel that fallacy. So operations, anything that keeps an organization running and earning money. And so I put this in because I just want you to be aware that there is a whole function in terms of managing operations, and it's called operations management. And there's a whole professional body of science, a whole career that you can pursue if you're really interested in operations and be an operations management person. Now, I'm not going to go into all these functions, though, that are part of operations management. I just wanted to create the awareness that systems can be complex. There's multiple systems for all the different functions within an organization, and all of those systems are handled in part of operations, and typically there is an operations management person. Now, if you happen to be a solo entrepreneur, add that to one more of the hats you wear, because you need to also be looking at all of these systems within your business, how they interact, and managing them to make sure that the business keeps running and keeps earning money. So you also become beyond the, let's call it the sales representative, beyond the marketing specialist, beyond the provider of the specialty that you provide. You also become the operations manager. So the key to all of this is that there is a system that you can use to create and implement strategy and measure your progress. And it is called strategic planning. So, what is strategic planning? And this is such fun for me because this is what I do with my clients. Strategic planning helps you, is simply a 7-step process that answers 4 what will appear to be simple questions, okay? So it answers 4 questions. And just think of it as a simple process. So what questions does it answer? First, where are you? And I don't mean where are you, like sitting at your desk, or what state are you in? What this means is, what is the current condition, situation of your business? And we call this the baseline. What are the conditions of your business right now? You know, do you have paying clients? What are the systems you have in your business? What are your revenues? The whole gamut of what is the situation for your business right now? What condition are you in? What is its status? So that's called the baseline. So the second question is, where do you want your business or organization to be? Now, you get to determine what is this time frame. And the time frame depends upon what industry are you in. Okay, so some of my clients will decide, okay, we want to pick a date of 3 years down the road, and then we can figure out where we want to be in 3 years. Now, some of my clients who happen to be, let's just say, in IT industries, computer, smartphones, that whole gamut, they need a shorter time frame than 3 years. You know, in some cases, they're using 1 year because their industry is changing so quickly. So they would be thinking about this question, where do we want to be in 1 year? And they would have conversations and come up with a decision of where do they want to be in that 1 year? What will their condition look like in 1 year? So you figure out, where do you want to be? Now, the next question is simple. How are you going to get there? What steps will you have to take to get to where you want to be in 3 years, 1 year? Maybe you have a 5-year time frame. Whatever time frame you select is appropriate for you. Okay, what are the steps that you're going to take to get there? And then the last piece, and this is such an important piece, is how will you know you have arrived? And this gets to the whole piece about measuring your progress. And when we're working in strategic planning, the whole tip to this is you figure out what you're going to measure and how you're going to measure before you start to take the action. So the fourth question, how will you know when you've arrived? So it's a very simple 7-step process. And I've created this process to work for my clients. We don't need the big theoretical, takes months and months and months and months type process. My clients need a process that will keep them focused, is easy and simple for them to contain and sustain throughout the process, and able to get from the beginning piece to the end piece, which is implementing and measuring, within a reasonable amount of time. So the first step that I use in my process is planning. And it sounds kind of funny that you have a step that is all about, you're going to spend some time planning to plan. But the really important reason for doing this is it's important to take into account, how are we going to sustain this effort? Who needs to be involved? How will we arrange time for the people who are doing our work to be involved in whatever part of the process we're asking them to be involved in? So it's planning so that the process and the action plan, the action steps and the measurement actually happens. Because what I don't want to hear from my clients is, oh yeah, we did it, but we put it on a shelf. We didn't do it, because that's a big waste of resources. The beauty and the impact of strategic planning is taking action and measuring your progress and then adjusting if you need to. So that's the first step. The second step is clarify the foundation, which is, let's go back and clarify our core values and the purpose for us being in business, or your mission. Okay, so those two things, clarify those. The third step, understand your environment. This is where you do your market research. What's going on in your marketplace at the moment? What trends, regulations may be coming down the pike? What can we learn from our marketplace in the past? Getting a clear understanding of what's going on in your market. Then the fourth piece is really refining where you want to be in that desired future based upon what you've clarified in your foundation and what you learned from your market research. And the piece with this is to be able to articulate it clearly, succinctly, and in somewhat of a short statement, so that you can share that with your managers, your stakeholders, your employees, people who need to understand where you're taking your organization. The fifth step is, what do you need to do to get there? Prioritize key strategic initiatives. Those steps that you need to get there become key strategic initiatives. What do you need to do to get to where you want to be? And they're prioritized. And I advise my clients, let's not have any more than 5. And you'll understand in the action planning why 5 is still a huge number. 1 to 3 is ideal. Okay? The sixth step in the process is develop the action plan. You need to develop a detailed action plan for each one of those key strategic initiatives. And I'll show you an action plan in a minute. Okay, and the step number 7 is take the action, implement, and measure. That's it. 7 simple steps. And the whole reason for doing this is to grow your business using the simple 7-step process. Because what it does, once you've got it mapped out, it keeps you focused. When an opportunity comes along, you look at it and you say, does this fit with our key strategic initiatives? If it does, fine, you take it on and you do it. If it doesn't, you say, oops, sorry, that's not going to fit with our strategic initiatives this time. Let's take a pass. So it keeps you focused. It helps you understand what progress you're making. And quite frankly, if you're not making the progress you expected, you adjust and you continue to move forward. So you use strategic planning to grow your business. So here's just a sample of let's just call it a template for action planning. You figure out your key strategic initiative, define the goal. There may be several objectives to reaching that goal. And then you work across all of those details. What's the action step? Who's going to be the champion to make sure we get this done? Who else needs to be involved? How are we going to make sure they have the time to do that? What other resources do we need? What's the start date? What's the end date? And how will we measure our progress? What are we expecting to achieve? So that's an action plan template. So strategic planning is implement your action plan, take the action, and measure your progress. And once you measure your progress, analyze it. What needs to change, if anything? Maybe you're making the progress you anticipated. Maybe you're making more progress than you anticipated. Wouldn't that be a lovely thought? So measure your progress. And the whole point of measuring your progress is that what gets measured gets done. And you use this to guide your team meetings, your staff meetings, to report to your stakeholders. So that's it. Time's running, the clock keeps ticking, and we're right on the button this time. Our next session is Tuesday, August 23rd. Again, it's at 12:30 Eastern Daylight Time. Tentative topics for the next power session will include: what defines a great strategy? How are you going to know if the strategy you're creating is a good strategy? And then I'm going to dig in some more on elements of strategic planning to give you some more insight into the different types of elements within it. So on that note, I want to again say thank you for joining me. The 2 free gifts for you are: schedule a free strategy session, 30-minute free strategy call. Again, this is not a sales call at all. This is simply a call to help you keep moving forward. So when you schedule it, you're going to get a follow-up sheet that says, what's the problem you want to discuss? One topic, one problem, one issue, whatever. Give me some insight, and when we get on the call, we'll brainstorm and see what it is that we can come up with that will help you take the next step. And the other link is for the free strategic planning ebook. Just go to that link and you'll download it right there. It's just a series of articles: why smart companies use strategic planning, streetwise tips, and a series of other articles. So again, thank you for joining me. Our next session is August 23rd. I hope you'll join me then. And if you're looking for the previous power sessions, just go to YouTube, do a search for Center for Strategic Change, and they're all up on our Center for Strategic Change channel. I'll put those links back up just one more time so you can take a screenshot, pull your camera, take a shot. And again, thank you so much for being with me, and I hope to see you August 23rd. Until then, remember, strategy plus systems equals success. So to your success, hope to see you